So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything
Nailed it.
is the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my
prior
God,
to-
so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by the winner of the RNA's Katie Fforde Debut Romantic Novel Award, Jamie from the future here, just to let you know that since recording this, Julie has also been nominated as one of the 8 contenders for the RNA's Joan Hessayon Award for New Writers. So that's awesome. And now back to the episode. Julie Haworth. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Hello.
First of all, huge congratulations.
Thank you.
For the release of your debut novel, Always by Your Side, and then having it win the Romantic Novelist Association's award. That must what an amazing reception to your debut novel.
Yeah, I think even hearing you introduce me and say the winner of, I'm still kind of like, did that actually happen? But yeah, it did. It's, oh my gosh, I almost don't have the words. It was just, it was such a shock and just such a huge surprise. And I feel like, I mean, that was in March, and I feel like I still haven't fully processed that it's actually happened.
You just have to pinch yourself every now and again.
It just was, it was such a lovely evening. It was just, it was definitely one of those moments that I feel like will be an absolute career highlight and that I'll just remember forever.
Well, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And speaking of careers, you have been an English teacher before you moved into copywriting. So you've always been in proximity to writing and words and that sort of thing. But prior to Always by Your Side, had you written many of your own stories before?
So this is probably, probably quite a shock when I say this, but no. So this was my first attempt.
Oh, wow.
Which I know. I feel like, that's always a bit of a shock, I suppose. I think it was just something that I thought was just so unachievable that I almost never tried, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was something that I'd thought about doing a lot, but never actually, put pen to paper or cranked up the laptop, and just had never given it a go because I just didn't think, it was something that someone like me would ever be able to do, I suppose. So it kind of felt quite off the table as an option.
So what was the thing that made you sort of go, you know what, I'm going to write a novel. Let's just do this.
So there were two things. So the first was that I met another author, Lizzie Chantry, who is Essex-based as well.
Yeah.
And she's in the RNA as well. And I met her at a networking event, I think probably January 2020. And she was organising a kind of author showcase in Essex that I went to in February, and there were loads of authors from all over the place that had stalls selling their books. You could chat to them about writing. And I went to that, and I just actually kind of, my impression when I came away from that was that these are all just regular people. Some of them have got other jobs. They're doing it on the side. Some of them are full-time authors, but they're all writing. And I think that was the first moment that I thought, okay, so like I could do, maybe it is something I could do. And that was the first kind of moment. And then obviously COVID hit in March 2020. I actually caught COVID first 5 days before the first lockdown. So it was kind of, I was sort of plunged straight into it really. And I was quite poorly for probably about 6 weeks. And I just remember thinking, and it sounds quite cheesy now, I sort of think back, but I just remember thinking, do you know what? When I'm better, I'm writing that novel. I'm just going to get started. And I just exactly did that. I literally opened the laptop, and obviously work had gone quite quiet with the lockdown and pandemic. And, so it was kind of like the perfect time to start. And once I started, it just kind of flowed.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think I can definitely relate to that. The idea of, it does seem like, from the outside looking in, it does seem like authors are these sort of like mastermind geniuses a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And meeting a lot of them in person, you kind of you suddenly think, oh, you're just we're just the same, really. That you just did it, you just did the thing and wrote it, and I'm not saying that there are obviously many authors are extremely talented and I could never write what they write, but there's something really about meeting an author in person, and this is the same for agents and editors as well, I think. And humanizing them really kind of gives you that confidence to be like, oh no, I think maybe I could do this, because they're only human too.
Definitely. And I just vividly remember that as being a real light bulb moment of kind of coming away from that. And just after, having spoken to lots of different authors, just having that sense that, okay, maybe I could do this. And I've never ever felt that before. So, I feel like going to that event was like a real, and I think Liz has been on your podcast actually.
She has, yeah.
And she's amazing. And I think meeting her and going to that event was just, kind of like a bit of a turning point, or something just kind of flipped in my head that I was like, oh, okay, maybe I could do this. And I can't remember ever thinking that before.
Yeah, that's great. And the RNA as a group as well is such a community, encouraging and supportive community. Like, they're some of the best people to just meet, and then they'll inspire you to kind of go on and do more things.
Absolutely.
So this was your first book, but coming into this from a sort of copywriting background, was there planning involved, or was it just full pantsing?
Oh gosh, I would say that I'm not much of a planner. So just to put that out there. So I think because it's something that I'd been thinking about for a while, I guess I had like the bones of the story kind of worked out, but I wasn't quite sure, how I'd get there and how that would look and how it would work. And I think, I would say this about, my second book that I've been writing as well, that I kind of figure it out as I write, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's almost like when I'm writing, something will spark and I'll be like, oh, actually, that would be a great idea, or that would be the right direction for this to go. So I find it quite hard to, I know some people can sit down before they start writing. They've got everything mapped out. They've got a really detailed synopsis. That's not my style. And I find that really difficult. And I tend to be just, kind of go with the flow and see where it takes me.
Yeah. One of my friends is, one of my friends is an extreme planner, and I have another friend who's not a planner at all. And, and she was saying part of the reason that she doesn't plan is not necessarily that she can't do it or doesn't understand the benefits of it. It's more that when she does it, she loses some of the enjoyment of writing, because she knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think there's also, it kind of maybe surprises me a little bit to go, oh, this is what's going to happen, or this is where I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, that's it.
So I just kind of feel like that works for me. So I haven't really tried to change. But then I do also think maybe it might be a good idea to try and sort of sit down and plot something out and see how that would go, because I've never really tried that.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of writers, once they've been published, do not necessarily become full regimented planners, but I think they do tend to move more into a planning direction. On the spectrum of planning to pantsing, they'll lean towards planning more, because I think after, obviously with subsequent books after book one, you're usually on deadlines.
Yes. And I think it's that thing of actually, I'm kind of learning all the time. I'm very aware that, I've only written one novel. It's the first one I've written. I'm kind of learning as I go along. And 100% that my way of doing it might not be the best way of doing it for me, and there might be better ways. So I'm really open to exactly that, to saying, or maybe I should try and, plot this one a bit more, or have and one of the things that I have already learned from my mistakes is that, I think if I'd kept really detailed, character notes at the beginning, that would have been really helpful, because I think I kind of thought I would remember all those small details. And then actually I'm in book 2 going, actually, can I remember the colour of so-and-so's hair? And I'm like, no, I can't. Right. Why haven't I written this down anyway? So I definitely think that was a massive learning curve, that I've started to do that now and keep sort of more detailed character notes, because you think you'll remember and you just don't. So that, I did. I sort of looked back on that and said, yeah, you should have been doing this from the start. So I'm very aware that there's probably much better ways of doing things than what I'm currently doing.
Yes. But I think like any craft, the more you practice, the more you do, the better you get. And I think,
Yes, I hope so. Yeah, I definitely hope that's true.
I think you can see with some of my favorite authors, I can flick through their first book, someone like Brandon Sanson, who's written a million books, and you can see in his first book, which is still great, but you can see how far he's come and how much more honed his style and his craft is in his like newer stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hope that's the case for me. And I kind of improve as I kind of go on. But yeah, it's a massive learning curve. And I think even with that first book, the whole editing process of you don't really know how it works. You don't know what's involved. You don't know how many sort of layers of edits are involved and things like that. And I remember, I think Sarah Jade Virtue at S&S said to me, like in one of our first meetings, that kind of, 90% of the work is still to come after the first draft.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, that can't be true. this was so much work. And then actually after going through all of that process thinking, yeah, that probably was actually quite accurate. So I feel that it is a really big learning curve on your debut. And you're just learning all the time. And so hopefully that makes it easier for your next book, in that you're kind of aware of what the process looks like and how it's going to work and sort of timescales and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So you are with Laura McDougall at United Agents. Did that signing, was that before or after you signed with Simon & Schuster?
So that was really recent. So I think I only signed with Laura about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it was super recent.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of went about things a bit topsy-turvy in that I obviously had the deal, had my first book out before I got an agent, which I know is probably, I don't know, I don't think that's the standard. So I feel like I sort of did things in the opposite way, if that makes sense.
I mean, it sounds like a great way to do it. I imagine did it make getting an agent somewhat simpler?
I don't know, because I guess I don't really know what it would have been like if I didn't already have the book out. So it's hard to say. And basically the deal with Simon & Schuster kind of came about as through the RNA. So it was basically a 1-day submission that they had just to Simon & Schuster through the Books in the City imprint, just for RNA members. And I'd only just joined the RNA, so I think I had joined in January 21, and that opportunity came up in February 21. I think it was a Valentine's Day thing. So it was just like a 1-day submission, and I just kind of bit the bullet and went, okay, I'll just send it, and sent my first 3 chapters, my synopsis, and then just see what happens. And I don't think I expected anything to happen, so it didn't actually feel that nerve-wracking. I just kind of hit send, and then I just forgot about it.
That's probably the least nerve-wracking through the whole experience, is just having no expectations is a sort of surprisingly healthy way to deal with these kinds of things.
Yeah, I guess. I was really lucky. It was literally my first submission. So I obviously didn't expect to hear anything back at all. And then probably, I don't know, maybe a couple of months later, got the email to ask for my full manuscript. And then I was like, oh, okay, now the stakes are a bit higher. Now this feels a little bit more stressful. I couldn't believe I got that email. But then once I sent it back, then obviously there's a wait where you're kind of, you don't know what's going to happen. And that did feel, I was checking my email a lot, and and that did feel like suddenly it's always that thing of, the closer you get to something, the more is at stake, I suppose.
Purchase new wiper blades from O'Reilly Auto Parts today and we'll install them for free. See better and drive safer with O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Yeah, one tip I heard with when you're in the sort of submission period of your writing is to have a separate email that all of your submissions go to, so that you're not constantly just checking your own email.
I didn't have that tip.
Yeah,
so it was just every time my email pinged, I was like, maybe this is the one. So it feels like a lot. I think even, I know that obviously wait times to hear back from publishers and agents and things are quite lengthy at times. But yeah, it does feel long. So it's hard to know if it just feels long or if it actually is a long period of time.
Yeah. So as someone who sort of did all the stuff and you signed through this RNA partnership with SNS by yourself.
Yeah.
Does it feel what's different about the kind of way you're looking at it, the way you're working, the way you're writing now that you have an agent?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like it's probably quite early days because I haven't been working with Laura for that long.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just that the sense that I don't know that you've kind of and SNS are absolutely amazing. So I feel incredibly lucky to work with them because I think as a new author, it can feel a bit daunting, it can feel a bit scary, and they're just all so lovely that they made it just seem an absolute pleasure and they didn't make it feel scary at all. So I feel like that was very lucky. But I also feel like obviously having an agent as well, I guess you've just got someone else that's like a sounding board, that is going to become your kind of go-to person for, if you want to talk about things or you've got questions and that kind of thing. So I feel like that's going to be, really useful and a real support in the future, which I guess it's almost like you don't know what you miss because you didn't have it in the beginning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it's also someone who, because, you're the writer, you didn't know too much about how this works, I assume, first time going through it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I kept saying to everyone, I'm just clueless. I don't know what's going to happen. I felt like I was kind of bumbling through the process, not really knowing what was going to happen. So I feel like I was probably quite aware that I didn't really know what I was doing and I didn't really know what was going to happen. So I just kind of, tried to just go with the flow and not kind of worry and overthink, but that's not always easy, but that's what I try to do.
Okay. Well, that's a good approach. Just keep it simple. Don't overthink everything. But hopefully now with your, future publishing endeavors, you have Laura, who is going to be someone who knows how publishing works. She knows all the ins and outs of it to kind of pick you up and shine a light to guide you through.
Yeah. And I think I definitely think that. And I also think that, my ambition is that obviously I would love to be a career author. That's kind of the goal. And I think, to do that, it makes sense to be working with an agent and to kind of have that kind of support and that network and that person that you're working with as well. So I think, that was definitely like on my list of, I've the book's out, I've won the award. I need to start looking for an agent and kind of taking things seriously. So I feel like it was a good time to start looking.
Did you go on like active submissions? Like it seems strange just because of the order you did it in.
Yeah, it is a strange order. So I did, yeah. So I guess I started, and I guess even that's quite tricky because it's almost like you think, right, I'm going to try and find an agent, and then you're kind of like, right, now where do I start? Like, how do I know who to get in touch with? And so I spoke to other authors that I know, so that was really helpful. And I just started looking at different agents' kind of websites and just trying to sort of like make a short list of because I feel like it's really important that I found an agent that I got on really well with, and it just was a good fit. So I did try and do a lot of research and spend a lot of time sort of thinking about who I would like to work with. But that does feel quite a tricky process because it's almost like, where do you start? How do you know how to get in touch with?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and it's just funny going that way around. You think like the debut novel's already out. You've won this prestigious RNA award, as well as like, there's potential follow up for more stuff, and you are doing more with Simon & Schuster.
Yeah, so basically, a little bit of an exclusive, hopefully, because I don't think it's really out there at the moment. But book 2 is happening. It's going to be out next summer, so summer 24, which is really exciting. So I'm working through some edits with Simon & Schuster for that at the moment, which is really exciting. And there will be, so the paperback of Always By Your Side is out on the 31st of August this year. And there is going to be like a little teaser at the end that's an extract from book 2. So that's really exciting. So anyone that reads the paperback will get that little kind of glimpse of book 2 at the back as well, which is really exciting.
Oh, that's great. So thing that you the partnership that you entered, the Valentine's Day thing where you could kind of blind enter to Simon & Schuster through the RNA. Was that for a digital only publication?
that's a good question. I feel like I should know the answer to that question. I'm like, I think it was. I think, yes, I think it was Digital Originals, which is kind of part of the Books in the City imprint.
Yeah.
So it was Digital Originals. So I knew it was going to be an ebook, but I didn't really know much more beyond that.
Right. Okay.
And then as it went, obviously the audiobook came out October last year. So that was really exciting. And then also obviously then got the date for the paperback, which is the 31st of August this year. So I don't think I knew there was going to be a paperback. It was never a definite. So I think, when I found that out, and obviously I'm still yet to have that moment where I hold it in my hands and I see it on the shelf in a bookshop and probably burst into tears.
Yeah.
In the middle of the aisle. So that's going to be a really emotional moment. I'm really looking forward to that happening.
Yeah, that's the dream moment, right? When you go to the bookshop or the library or something and you see it in the shelves with all the authors that you've grown up with and stuff, and you're like, oh my God.
I can't believe it. So that still hasn't happened. So maybe that's kind of, I don't know, maybe I think part of me feels like maybe it won't feel real until I have that moment. I don't know. But also, I'm not sure it ever feels real. Maybe I think when you speak to other authors, they're just like, it always feels like this. It never feels real. So I'm definitely in that where it, in that mindset where it kind of feels like it's not happening to me, but it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe once you've got a few more books, you'll accept the reality that the first book did come out.
I don't know how many books you have to have before it just becomes normal to you. I don't know, but I'm still very much in that kind of, I can't believe this is actually happening.
Yeah. So you are working on more books with Simon & Schuster, so that's you've kind of extended your partnership with them.
Yeah. So book 2 is definitely happening, and that's out next summer.
Amazing. So you're obviously happy at Simon & Schuster. What's the process like? Was it kind of what you expected from having like submitted your novel and working with editors and then it kind of finally going out?
I guess I didn't know what to expect. If I'm totally honest, I think I had no clue of what to expect.
Yeah.
And I think I knew what the process was. So I knew that there'd be a structural edit first. Then I knew that there'd be like more of a line edit and then a copy edit and then a sort of final proofread. So I knew the stages, but I just wasn't really sure what that looked like. And I do remember people asking me questions and saying, so what do you have to do? Like for what is a copy edit? What happens? I was like, I don't really know. I'm sort of waiting for it to land in my inbox and then I'll figure it out. It was a real learning curve, I suppose, because I didn't know what to expect. But again, I feel like the editors that I work with at Simon & Schuster are just fantastic and everything just makes sense. And everyone's just working towards that goal of just making the novel the best possible version that it can be. And it feels like, that feels, feels like a very natural process, which, I think is great. And whenever the edits land, I always kind of read the notes and go, oh yeah, I completely get like where they're coming from and it all makes sense. And, so it's been a good process. And I feel like with book 2, I've just got a much better understanding of like what that looks like and how it all works and fits together.
Okay. Do you think like that kind of new confidence, do you think that will help you sort of as you go through it a second time around?
Yeah, I hope so. I think, obviously I've still got a lot of time on my side because book 2's not out for a while. So that's helpful. But yeah, I think I do. And I think when you've done it once before, it feels like, okay, yeah, I know how this works. I know what I'm doing. So I probably do feel a bit more confident this time around.
And when I'm trying to think, always great to ask people about advice. And I know people it's a bit shaky to give advice, especially when they're debut novelists and you don't feel like you've been in the industry for that long. But if you could go back to, let's say, early 2021, when you kind of finishing writing this book and just thinking about submitting it, what advice would you give yourself? If you could go back.
That's a really good question. What advice would I give myself? I guess just have to have that faith in yourself, not to question yourself, not to doubt yourself. I think that imposter syndrome is a thing, and I think lots of authors kind of suffer from that. And I think it's, just have that confidence in yourself and don't second guess yourself and just trust the process and that it's all going to work out really. And I think hopefully sort of with the second novel, I do feel like that's happening a bit more. I feel like I probably, not that I'm confident, but I think everyone questions themselves. But I do think that, you can do it because you've done it once. But then I suppose also at the same time, when you're writing your first novel, there's not really any pressure because you're just doing it for yourself. You're kind of doing it for fun and you haven't really got any expectations. And I guess with the second novel, it doesn't, maybe there are expectations or not that, I think you can sometimes put pressure on yourself, not that there's necessarily any external pressure, but I think, those thoughts do go through your head. I hope this is going to be I hope I can do it again. I hope this one's going to be as good. All of those sort of thoughts. So I guess it's just, I trust yourself is probably, just have faith in yourself that you can do it. I think, we could all remind ourselves of that in whatever we're doing in life, couldn't we probably?
Yeah, just stick with it, and if you work hard at it, and eventually it'll probably come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that can be hard, especially when you're, sort of quite early in the process and you're staring at a blank page or you're figuring things out. I guess that's, that can be a tough moment. So I guess just have that faith, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. That's great advice, and a great way to round off the episode, going into our final question, which as always is, Julie, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would it be?
Oh, so this is, I tried to kind of trick you with this one because I was going to go for a Kindle and say that I put all my books on it and then it will be fine. But if I had to narrow it down, I think this probably wasn't actually that difficult because I think I always knew which one it was going to be. And that is going to be Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte.
Yeah.
And I read that when I was studying English Lit for my A-levels. So I was like 17 years old, which feels like a long time ago. And I think that was the book that made me want to study English at university and really kind of ignited my passion for reading. And I think that's when I knew that I wanted to do English for my degree, and I knew that books somehow were going to be important in my life somehow. I hadn't quite figured it out at that age, but it definitely made a real impression, and it kind of it sort of steered me on the right path, I think.
Yeah, I mean, any book that kind of shapes you and sculpts you and sets you on a certain trajectory is always going to be, like, any good book that's influential on you as a reader, I think is always an amazing choice.
Exactly. And I was clearing out, I was going through some books actually a few weeks ago, my bookcase, and I've still got that copy from my A-levels with all my notes like handwritten in and all bits highlighted and things. And I don't know why I've just, I've kept it all these years. And I don't have that much space in my bookcase, but it's like the one book that's always stayed there. And I've read it so many times, and obviously there's been lots of different sort of TV adaptions and film adaptions, and I just love the story. So it's just one that always stays with me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And well, thank you so much, Julie, for coming on the podcast and chatting with us, telling us all about your writing and your publishing adventures. It's been really fun chatting with you. Yeah,
Angie, thank you so much for inviting me on.
You are most welcome. And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Julie is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at @JHaworthAuthor or on Instagram at JulieHaworthAuthor. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow along on all socials. And to support the show, you can head over to Patreon. For more bookish chat, check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Julie, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.